Hi everyone, Bernard here with the latest Citizen vlog, and today we're doing a city past. In the links below you'll see a link to a previous one I did on the birth of Manchester City. So I did from 1880 to 1894, obviously at St Mark's and Hardwick. So this is the second part now. I've used various sources for this information, Manchester Evening News, Daily Mirror, the wonderful Gary James, David Clayton, and various Getty images, etc., to put this together, as well as checking through the internet, researching things through the internet. So I've got a few little bits and pieces here, and I'll show you the things as and when we go through them. And if you bear with me, I'll show you some nice images and some pictures and some old stuff, obviously, even 1894 to 1904, going back even before I was born. So there you go, I'm doing really well. I say most of my Citizen past vlogs are from the late 50s, early 60s when I started, obviously when I came onto this planet and started watching City in the mid 60s. So it's nice to do a little bit, delve into the history. And of course, if you get in the Manchester City programmes, Gary James is doing a wonderful timeline in the City programmes, which obviously I'm going to dip in and out of as well for this information that I'm going to give you today. And that's obviously Gary James's. You know, he knows far more than I. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know. I think Mr. Gary James, wonderful student of history. Anyway, let's start this off with 1894. Obviously, April 1984 was 1894 was when we became into being, obviously, and thanks in the main to a gentleman called Joshua Parlby. Who was a visionary who created City. I mean, we'll talk about this guy in a bit, this other guy in a bit, but that's your Joshua Parlby there with the lovely hat. A bit like a bit of a cowboy sort of thing going on there, wasn't there? And the squad in the 1895 squad, I'll just get that out for you. And this is thanks to this little magazine that the MEN produced in 1994, 100 Years of the Blues. This was a little magazine that was put out in December of that year, and obviously it's the biggest image I've seen of the City squad for 1894 and 1895. So obviously there you've got the Baby Blue City lineup in their debut season, 1894-95, which was the second division. Obviously, back row left to right, Les, WLES, if you pronounce it like that. Trainer, McDowell fullback, Hutchinson goalkeeper. So obviously let's get that guy with the hat on. Skerritt assistant secretary, W. Chapman chairman, and Lumsden a half-back. And then the second row, Dider a fullback, Smith halfback, Bowman halfback, Douglas halfback, Bennett fullback, and the front row, Tomkinson right wing, Johnston inside right, Nash centre forward, Bonantine inside left, and Malavi left wing. So that was like one of the early images of Manchester City there with that. And we also do have an image in this little book I've been using that we got with the season cards, which is, if you've not had a look through that and you got a season card, you must. I'm sure most people just had a glance through it. But there's another picture, April lights. Nice, a nice sort of half thing, wasn't it? Half and half image, half and half shirt. So another image of the 1894-95 league game was away at Bury. On a Sunday. A lot of games were played on a Sunday in those days as a standard day. Obviously, people used to work Monday, Saturday. So Sunday was a day of rest, so a lot of games were played on a Sunday afternoon. Unfortunately, we lost 4-2 to Bury on the 1st of September in 1894. And then the first home game was the following Tuesday, and we managed a 1-1 draw with Burton Wanderers, obviously no longer with us. A crowd of 2,500, not fantastic, but it's the first game in the second division. And then we got our first win in the next game on Sunday, the 8th of September, with a 4-1 win versus Burslem Port Vale. I think I did touch upon that in one of my vlogs about the Port Vale game. Obviously, that was the forerunner of Port Vale, but they were called Burslem Port Vale. In front of a better crowd, 4,000. Obviously, it was a Sunday, so a better crowd of 4,000, which wasn't bad in those days. 4-1 win over them. And It was in October that year that we signed a guy who's going to have a big impact on City and obviously go on to other things that affected City as well. And in October of that year, we signed the Welsh winger Billy Meredith, who was later acknowledged. Obviously, I'll talk a little bit more about that after, as the first footballing superstar. So that's a picture of Billy Meredith there. That was on the other thing. I've got a bigger picture actually in this Manchester Evening News thing. It's quite an unusual one as well because I'm not giving too much away. You probably know he did go on to play for Manchester United, Billy Meredith. So there's a really big image of Billy Meredith there in a United kit at the time. You know, obviously doesn't look as good as he would look as good as he would in our kit, but you know, that was Billy Meredith, who we signed in October. A little bit more on about him later on. I mean, he made his debut on the 27th of October away at Newcastle in a 5-4 defeat. So there were a lot of good high-scoring games in those days. You did have your boring ones, but there's a few good high-scoring games. So we lost to Newcastle 5-4. And his home debut was made the week after when he scored both City's goal in a 5-2 defeat again against a certain Newton Heath, who obviously we know would become Manchester United again within this 10 years. You'll also see that as well. A crowd of 14,000, so a good crowd. And he had a habit of chewing on a toothpick. So I assume he had this habit of chewing on the toothpick when he was playing as well. But that was one of his little foibles. I don't think they'd be allowed to get away with it now. The 1894-95 season, we should have entered the FA Cup, but some administrative error meant we didn't enter the FA Cup, so we didn't play in that. But it was during this season City recorded their biggest league victory in March 1895, so towards the end of the season, when they had an 11-3 win over Lincoln City. And we did finish 9th in Division 2. We did play a number of friendlies. I mean, there's a lot of friendlies played, including a 9-0 win against Everton at the end of the season in April. The biggest crowds at Hydro were obviously the Newton Heath game, as mentioned, which was 14,000. But we also got 10,000 against Bury, 8,000 against Newcastle, 7,000 against Notts County, and 6,000 against Darwin. So there's another team who's obviously sadly passed out of memory. Now on to the 1895-96 season, so our second season. This was a good season. Saw some bigger crowds as well, including 20,000 against Newton Heath this time, with record gate receipts at the time of £410. And we also had a massive 30,000 crowd in Hydro for a 1-1 draw with Liverpool, which again was late on in the season. We did enter the FA Cup. We did remember. Someone remembered to fill the form in this time. But we had some little problems, and that I couldn't discover what the problem was. Mr. James might know, but we had to withdraw because of some problems. So City withdrew from the game, and we were due to play Oswald Twistle, the very famous Oswald Twistle. Have a look at them on the internet. We were due to play Oswald Twistle Rovers, but for some reason City withdrew. So Oswald Whistle went through. Obviously got a buy into the next round. In the Manchester Senior Cup, obviously this was a regular thing. We did reach the final, but we were beaten by Bury 2-1, unfortunately. And we finished second in the league, which is excellent. But we didn't automatically lead to promotion, as we had to play something like a playoff then. It was called a test match. They're called test matches. So if you look at the league table for 1895-96. So obviously we've got Liverpool. This is from another book, Manchester City Moments to Remember, a great book from John Crichton, how you pronounce that. So yeah, I mean, it's Liverpool won the league and Manchester City a very healthy second. Played 31-21, drawn 4, and only lost 5, 63-38. So we're well ahead of the 13, 46 points. Grimsby ended up with 42 there. So, but it didn't mean automatic promotion. It meant we actually went into the playoffs. And again, the playoffs, we played West Bromwich Albion and Small Heath. So you played a team from the first division, and obviously to actually get into the first division. So I think it was like when we started our playoffs, we had a similar thing where you also played against a team in the division above. The first game against West Brom ended 1-1, but we had a fans boycott. So, I mean, obviously, and the fans boycott was because we doubled ticket prices. So many City fans boycotted the game. But we only drew 1-1 with West Bromwich Albion, sadly. There's a lot of bad taste left in the mouth by Manchester City. No change there. Doubling the prices is a bit rich on the rest of the season. They then lost to West Brom 6-1 away and missed out on promotion despite beating Small Heath at home 3-0. That we were battered by Small Heath away by 8-0. Enjoying that season. We also played Glasgow Celtic. We actually played, used to play the Glasgow teams quite often in friendly games. So we played Glasgow Celtic at Hyde Road early in the season and actually won that 3-2. So, but as I said, the Glasgow teams are always most welcome at Hyde Road in City's early days. So we finished sadly second, but we didn't get promotion that year, which was a great shame, obviously. So we've gone to 1896, 1897. And in this year, we finally did manage to play an FA Cup game. But sadly, we drew Preston away and we were beaten 6-0 in the first round in front of a crowd of 6,000. We also reached the Lancashire Senior Cup final. So we had the Manchester Senior Cup final and the Lancashire Senior Cup final. But we lost 2-0 to Everton. And the biggest crowd of the season, again, was for the visit of someone called Newton Heath again. A scoreless draw. There was a crowd of 20,000 for that. But we could only finish sixth, so we didn't do as well as we did the season before. But it wasn't long overdue before things started improving. So we moved on to the 1897-98 season. We actually went one better in the FA Cup. We did actually progress to the second round. We beat Wigan County, not Wigan Athletic, Wigan County then in the first round, and then lost to Bolton Wanderers 1-0 in the second round. Typical City reared its ugly head again, when obviously you had typical City way not entering the FA Cup, didn't we, in the first season, but typical City reared its ugly head back in 1897-98 in the Manchester Senior Cup, because we actually beat Stockport County in the final 4-0, but then it had to be replayed because City had fielded a non-registered player. And we lost the replay 2-1. So no change there. Big crowds, a crowd of 20,000 against Burnley in a 1-1 draw. And again, as you probably expect, a big crowd against Newton Heath. Not quite as good as the Burnley one. Newton Heath was a crowd of 16,000 on Christmas Day in 1897, because obviously a lot of games were played on Christmas Day. And we did finish third, but unfortunately, obviously finishing third was no good. You had to finish second to get into the test match playoff. So in 1897-98, we finished third, so missing out of there. Now, this is where it all gets interesting. 1898-99 season, so we're getting towards the end of the millennia, aren't we? One of the Preston Invincibles, a man called Jimmy Ross, who'd obviously Preston Invincible team in the 1890s. Jimmy Ross joined late in the 1898-99 season to help a final push because we were doing really, really well in the league. We even recorded on the 18th of February a 10-0 home win versus Darwin. So it's actually, I think we've got a programme from the featured in one of the official programme actually in the City, Gary James's 125-year thing, and it was an official programme there, for all the teams. So it's like for different teams. It was for let's have a look at this: Forgan, Manchester City, Newton Heath, Broughton Rangers, and Salford Club. So it's like a magazine produced for all the sort of Manchester-based teams, if you like, which is quite interesting. The official programme there. And there were 20,000 crowds in the that season. We had a 4-0 win over Newton Heath, which is very good, a 20,000 crowd, and a 2-0 win over Small Heath, who obviously had ended up in the second division from the first. Despite poor results in the cups of that year, City went on to win the league and gained 52 points from 34 games. Glossop North End were also promoted in second. If you remember, the test match system was scrapped this year, so it's scrapped in 98-99, and they were actually promoted set in second place because the system was scrapped. So Glossop North End. So should have a picture of the winners here of the celebrating team. So that's it. That's the team that won the title that season, 98-99. Brave set of fellows there. So that was it, into Division 1, which, that's where everyone wanted to be, didn't it? That's where everyone needed to be. And in 1899, so we started the 1899-900 new millennium season, really, isn't it? Because going into 1900, so a wonderful time to start in Division 1. Our first game was away to Blackburn Rovers, which was unfortunately a 4-3 loss. But then our first win the following week in front of 22,000 at Hyde Road, a 4-0 win over Derby County, 22,000. So obviously getting into the first division, you got all the glory hunters jumping on the bandwagon. You had some bigger crowds. You had a 22,000 against Notts County, 25,000 against Newcastle, 25,000 against Liverpool, 20,000 against Sunderland, 20,000 against Everton. Were in fact the third best supported team in the first division. So within the first season of being there, we were the actual, that's average crowds, were the third best supported team. And the manager was called Sam Ormerod at the time. You should have a little picture, not the greatest picture of Sam Ormerod. Yeah, bit patchy, nice moustache going on, nice bowler. Is that a bowler hat? Probably some gentlemen I know better than I do. I'm not really into what hats are and what they are. Sam Ormerod there. And a rarity, actually, on the 14th of April in 1900. So towards the end of the season, in a 3-1 loss away to Sunderland, the City keeper, Charlie Williams, actually scored a goal for City. So this was the first ever by a keeper in the top division. So I actually got an image of Mr. Charlie Williams somewhere, if you'll bear with me. The aforementioned goalkeeper. It's a little picture of Charlie Williams. I mean, obviously, people my age would know Charlie Williams as a comedian in the 70s, but obviously of the black persuasion, but this isn't that Charlie Williams, obviously. And so friendlies that year included a 3-0 loss at home to Glasgow Rangers. So again, keeping up the thing of playing these Glasgow teams. They had no luck in the cup, but finished a respectable 7th in League Division 1. So our inaugural season, that was an excellent thing. And as I said, we had the third highest crowds as well. So there's a lot of optimism going into 1901. A season card cost 22 shillings and sixpence to actually at Hyde Road. So there's an image again in the programme of the image of the season card for the central stand there. You know there? Yeah. So it was a card. It wasn't like ours, was it? So, these cards are not a new thing. You didn't have to swipe it, though. Obviously, you didn't have to put it in a slot. But it was a season card, so that's what it was. It wasn't a season ticket with all these little season tickets in that obviously would come into play. And obviously, Hyde Road was becoming really, really popular. And amongst the visitors to Hyde Road at the time was a future Prime Minister, Arthur Balfour. So if you look at there, again, that image there, he said he's in front of the changing rooms. I mean, it looks as though he's in front of the refreshment bar there, but Arthur Balfour, future Prime Minister of the UK. So City up north are becoming one of the really big teams. And again, that's another programme. So we've got a Manchester City an actual programme now just for Manchester City. That was from December 1900. So we're actually producing its own official programme for Manchester City there. This season, the season saw City rise to the second best. So they've been the third best supported team. They're also been the second best supported team, only behind Aston Villa, who obviously, at that stage were a long-established top-tier club. And the biggest crowds were 23,000 versus Bury and West Brom. So we're getting some really good crowds. Sadly, the second season didn't do as well, though. We dropped to 11th place, but we did win the Manchester Senior Cup. So we actually won a little cup there, beating Newton Heath 4-0 in the final. So it wasn't all despair, wasn't it? But it was a little bit disappointing. So crowds were up. We finished 11th. We've won the Manchester Senior Cup, so it wasn't all bad, was it? And then we led to 1901, 1902, and City lost their first 5 games of the 01-02 season and never really recovered from that. Again, being well supported, we still remained the 3rd best supported club, even though we were struggling. Included crowds of 25,000 against Sheffield Wednesday and 22,000 against Liverpool and Everton. But we finished 18th and were relegated. To add to the misery, Newton Heath, who would beat in the Cup the year before, also beat City in the Manchester Senior Cup. So it wasn't the greatest season, was it? It was a bit depressing. So spent 3 seasons in the First Division and were relegated again out of the Division 1. So 1902, 1903, we were actually in the Second Division in June of 1902. The already mentioned Jimmy Ross from the Preston Invincibles died from a sudden rash and a fever. So whether this was a type of meningitis, I'm not too sure. But it was devastating. You know, the Jimmy Ross died of meningitis. And then a few weeks later, another City player, defender Di Jones, gashed his knee in a practice match. It turned septic and he died 7 days later. So we lost yet another player. And But City actually did raise funds for both these players' families because obviously, as you can appreciate, things were obviously tight for families at the time. I do have a couple of images. That's the image of Jimmy Ross. And we also have an image, I think, of somewhere. Di Jones actually in action. That's an action picture. That's Di Jones marking the front post there. So that's the other gentleman who unfortunately lost his life. So Di Jones and Jimmy Ross. So a great shame, and it did sort of rock City a little bit in this season, this 1902-1903 season. Despite that, I mean, obviously we'd been relegated. Despite this, the mood was good on the pitch when the season started, and crowds were still very, very good. 2 games against a team that was now called Manchester United. So Newton Heath had changed all of a sudden now to Manchester United, resulted in a crowd. So both games against the 2 derby games, a crowd of 40,000 at Bank Street, which is where United played. Their usual average was about 10,000. They got 40,000 against City. So I'm sure there's a lot of City fans bolstered that capacity. And a 1-1 draw at Hyde Road was watched by 30,000. So obviously the limitations of the ground, I'm sure they probably could have got some more in there. I don't know, you know, obviously I think the official capacity was about 34,000, but obviously so 40,000 at Bank Street and 30,000 at Hyde Road. But during this season, City were recording really big scores. They had a 6-0 win against Burnley, a 7-1 against Burslem Port Vale again, and a 9-0 against Gainsborough Town. I've seen Gainsborough Town mentioned in recently as in the FA Cup, one of the non-league teams. Much of City's success was attributed to a Tom Maley, who was secretary stroke manager, so secretary and manager, and he'd made some shrewd signings. So again, that was... We've got a picture of Tom Maley from the programme. He used to play for Celtic. So that's Tom Maley. Oh, that's a wicked moustache going on there. Good head of hair and a wicked moustache. So that's Mr. Tom Maley, who was the secretary manager. And we did manage to win the title again. So we again won the Second Division again. And striker Billy Gillespie, who was another cult hero alongside Billy Meredith, scored 30 goals. Many of which were by him barging the keeper into the goal, normally allowed in those days. So yeah, he would take a run at the keeper would collect it, and you've probably seen some old footage of games where keepers were bundled into the goal and the goal stood, and that was one of his little things. Billy Gillespie, he just barged the goalkeeper into the net, so everything went into the net, which is quite interesting. That was 1902, 1903, and we do have a league table for that one somewhere. Let me have a look. Yeah, there we go. So we managed to finish top with Small Heath finishing second. Manchester United back in 5th there. It's usually 5th to 6th, aren't they, these days, if they're very lucky. But you got Woolwich, Arsenal, Bristol City, Chesterfield. Look at that. So, hey, another league. So that's what, 2 in 4 or 5 years, which was pretty good, wasn't it? So that led us to 1903-1904 season, which is the last one we're going to have a look at today. And obviously, we started the season really, really well. Won the first 4 games back in Division 1. Crowds again were excellent, and numbers of 30,000 crowds at Hyde Road. And we were second only again to Aston Villa by only 300 or 400 on average. And City and Aston Villa were the only 2 clubs at the time who had attracted average crowds of over 20,000. So Aston Villa and Manchester City had attracted crowds like that. In the league, City did really, really well. We ended up finishing second in the league. So, a double was actually on that season, because I'll tell you about the 1904. Most of you know about the FA Cup. We obviously finished second, and we finished second by 3 points. But literally before the cup final, we were, if City had obviously City had a chance to still win it. They had a game to play against Everton a couple of days after the FA Cup final, but sadly they lost that, and obviously Wednesday won there, so that was the deciding points difference between the 2 teams. So we did really, really well. And of course, the glory was to come in the FA Cup, and we reached the final thanks to wins against Sunderland, Woolwich, Arsenal, Middlesbrough, and Sheffield Wednesday. And now I go on to this Sports Illustrated book now, which is a fantastic book, absolutely brilliant. There is a newer version of this out, but I've got this, and this is I got a copy of this, and this one only goes up to about 2010. 2011. So it finishes at City against Stoke, my version, but there is an updated version that takes us up to last season. So, and what's great about this, obviously, it has the team photos of Bolton and Manchester City for the FA Cup finals. So the squads there, obviously City have got, is it probably the Manchester Senior Cup and the Division 2 trophy there at the top. That's Manchester City at the top. Big squad, right? So it's not a new thing, is it, having big squads? But it's quite interesting because on April the 23rd, which is the morning of the game, so there's things from the Daily Mirror. So on April the 23rd, it was commenting about the football final. An army of Lancastrians expected at Palace today. So obviously the game was played at Crystal Palace, as you know. The 33rd final tie in the Football Association Cup will be decided within the Sports Arena at Crystal Palace this afternoon. The competing clubs are Manchester City and Bolton Wanderers, both Lancastrian teams. The latter fact has been regarded as likely to diminish the interest of Londoners in the function, but with this idea we do not agree. The final tie is the final tie, just as a derby is a derby. This is a good comment, thousands of horny-handed and curiously garbed enthusiasts left Manchester and Bolton. This is a Sutton-based paper, obviously, writing this. Late last night for the great metropolis, they travelled by special trains on all the available routes, and it is calculated that quite 30,000 of them will do a sightseeing meander through London's principal streets this forenoon. So obviously, they go on to say about the Great Northern Railway getting all these fans to the ground. And this is the morning of the game. So this was printed the night before, don't forget. But some fans did travel and stay. To feed the multitude, there are in readiness 240,000 glasses, 120,000 cups and saucers, and 240,000 knives, forks and spoons, as well as tons of edibles of all descriptions to give these implements of the table full occupation. There will be mountains of bread, plain and fancy, carloads of beef and mutton, quite a big market garden full of vegetables and cheese and butter, and all such snacky provender by the hundredweight. So, it's absolutely fantastic. And you go on about the team. The Manchester City King came to town on Thursday from their training ground at Norbreck Hall near Blackpool. They went straight out to Sydenham, where they found very comfortable quarters at Belfort House. The party consists of 13 players, an unlucky number, and their manager, Mr. T.E. Maley. So So that was a great piece in the Daily Mail. And obviously, City did go on to win the game, as you know, through a Billy Meredith goal. And it says the headline on April the 25th, which obviously after the game was Manchester win T in speech mark to coop. They're trying to do a northern accent, I think. To coop. I think Bolton were cheered by Southern football enthusiasts, but without avail. So obviously, City were the baddies in this, by the looks of it. And it goes on to say Manchester City won the Football Associate Cup from Bolton Wanderers at the Crystal Palace on Saturday afternoon by 1-0. And I think there's a lot of claims that the goal should have been offside as well. Shrewd sportsmen selected Manchester City as the probable winners, but once the men had entered the field of play, one could make no mistake as to which side had caught the popular fancy. Whatever Bolton did, it was hopeful or fruitful or clever in execution, was cheered to the echo. The applause that fell to the lot of Manchester City was neither so strong in volume or so frequent. The Cockney element in the crowd showed its sympathy for the supposed to be weaker side in characteristically sporting fashion. The verdict to the non-partisans at the close was hard lines. So yeah, I think it was a crowd of 61,374, of which they reckon about 40,000 was made up of northern supporters from Manchester City and Bolton. And obviously Arthur James Balfour, the future Prime Minister that we saw earlier on, he was actually there at Wembley, even though we may have been in the minority with fans because all the Londoners supporting Bolton. He had a City rosette on, so at least we had the Prime Minister, or the future Prime Minister, I think he was the Prime Minister then at the time. And it cost 5 shillings, 25p to stand in the uncovered enclosures at Wembley. And obviously we must have a picture of the goal. Here we go, goal and the team here from the Moments to Remember, which you've seen in the programme. So that's the goal from Billy Meredith there on its way in, and that's the team with the cup, the original FA Cup in front of them. A great image of all. Obviously, you must have seen that over time, that image. So that was our first bit of silverware, obviously, ever. So that was really good. Billy Meredith's fame continued to grow. Obviously, he scored the goal at Wembley, and he was given poems and songs were written about him. Songs were sung on the terraces about him. He was also picked up by companies like Oxo to advertise their products, and politicians wanted his support, not just Balfour. Other politicians wanted him on their campaigns to give him their support. Sadly, things, as we'll look at in our next run from 1905. From 1905 to 1914-15, the outbreak of war, things would change for City and for Billy Meredith, obviously. But hey, things were going really well. City also reached the Manchester Senior Cup final, and they played Bury. So they were amongst all this league campaign and FA Cup, and they drew 1-1. So it went to replay, but due to all our City's commitments, it wasn't replayed until December the following season, and we lost 4-0. So we didn't win the Senior Cup, unfortunately. So City confirmed themselves a major footballing force by just failing to win the league. So I say nearly did a double, not quite. So close to this, and this was a rare achievement in itself. And you can, even to this day, it's still quite rare. City's achievement significantly, the FA Cup victory, was claimed by many to make Manchester a truly footballing city. Previously, it had been perceived as a rugby city. That was interesting. That was the first time City became. So obviously, it would then take us on to 1904 and 5, and sadly, the highs will be short-lived. But obviously, there's going to be more of that next time. So, hope you enjoyed that little wander through with some various bits of information. It does take a little bit of research to do this and put it in some sort of order. So if I've got any information slightly wrong, please forgive me. I mean, I can't verify 100% everything. I may say the wrong thing. So just please bear with me. If you want to make a comment that if something is wrong, then through the various scrapbooks and various magazines, etc., and programs. So hope you enjoyed that. There's a couple of other good City vlogs out there, City Pass vlogs. There's a City quiz out there as well. I'll put it in the links below. And there's also looking at City in January 1977. Obviously, we picked a month. We started back in August, and we're now up to a January. So we picked different years. And I had a look back at January 1977, which was another interesting month. And most months are. There's never a dull moment in the world of Manchester City, that's for sure. You know, now or obviously in the past, in our long, wonderful, super, fantastic history. But I hope you enjoyed that. Please follow me on Twitter at nostalgia_movie and on Facebook at Bernardine, with links to movieGameNostalgia.com, which is my website for rare DVDs, board games and posters. If you ever get a chance to have a look over there, please do so. Please push the subscribe and push the bell notification so when you know that when these are coming out. Obviously, I'll probably do the next one, 1945 to the outbreak of World War One. I'll probably do that within the next 3 or 4 weeks. So please look out for that one. And obviously, I always do my City Present vlogs, which are about what's going on in City's world now. And there will be a February City Pass coming out. And I don't know the year yet, so that'll be a surprise. But I'll be looking at a February when towards the end of January, I'll be looking forward to a February back in time. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you can join me again. And please follow any links below and check up some of the other stuff I've done on all the playlists are there, so you can sort out what you want to watch and have a listen and a watch, because it's more watching, because there's a lot of it's not just talking. I do like to show little things on all my vlogs, so I'll try and put a little bit of more interest in there rather than just chatting away to you. All right, thanks for watching. What are we going to do with the rest of the day? Have a great one. Look after yourself, look after your friends, and more importantly, look after your family. And I'll see you all again very soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.